Atensonum per sepulcra regionum, coget omnes ante tronum, morsto bebites natura, cum resurget creatura, judicanti responsora, liber scriptus proferetur, in quotorum continetur, undem mundus judicetur, exergotum sedi, miser dictur, quem patronum rogaturus, cum extremende maestatis, qui salvando salvas gratis, salva me fons pietatis, recordare supie, quod sum causa tuae die, ne me perdas illa die. Querens me sedis illa sus, redemisti crucem passus, tantus labor non sit casus, juste ut exultionis, non acreditionis, ante diem rationis, indemis cotam quam reus, culpa rubet vultus meus, supplicanti parce meus, Mariam absolvisti, et latronem exaristi, reces meem non sunt digne, sed tu bonus fac benigne, ne perendi cremer digne. Erodes locum prestam, et arebis me sequestra, statum in parte extra, confutatis maledictis, lammis sacribus addicti, vocam mecum benedicti, oro supplex et aquilis, cor contritum quasi cinis, derecurram mei finis, lacrimo nobis offerimus. Usucipe pro anima busi. Varum hodie memoriam facimus, ac eas Domine, de morte transire ad vitam. Quam olim Abrae promisisti, et Spiritu tuo, habemus ad Dominum, Dignum et justum est. Sanctus Dominus Deus Sabaoth, pleni sunt celi et terra, gloria tua, Hosanna in excelsis. eternum, qui habius est. De profundis clamavi ad te, Domine. Domine, exaudi vocem meam. Sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Iam paures tue intendentes, in vocem deprecationis meis, cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. In iniquitates observaveris Domine, Domine qui sustinebit, cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Quia apud te propitiatio est, ut timeamus te. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Sustinuit te, Domine, sustinuit anima mea in verbo eius. Speravit anima mea in Domino, magis quam custodes auroram. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Magis quam custodes auroram. Speret Israel in Domino. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Quia apud Dominum misericordia, et copiosa apud eum redemptio. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Et ipse redimet Israel, ex omnibus iniquitatibus eius. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius est. Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine, et lux perpetua lucea Tei. Cum sanctis tuis in eternum, qui habius spiritu tuo. Et cum spiritu tuo.
The sixth chapter of the Gospel according to St. John. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has life everlasting, and I will raise him up on the last day. Nomine Patris, Filii et Spiritus Sancti. What we come here to do this evening used to be normal, something that people did in another time. We come here to celebrate the solemn Mass of All Souls Day. Offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass for the faithful departed, for those we have loved and see no more, for those who have died, for those who in our faith and in their faith make sense of what we come here to do in this church this evening. And yet to offer a Requiem Mass, to come together in this church this evening, it's an annual event that is on the church calendar. And therefore, we presume that something happens here, and this is truly an event, not something that one just goes through. But those who commit to this Mass do so as a distinct minority in this present age in the church and in the world. For those who come here take death seriously. They take Franz Kafka's words, "He died like a dog," seriously, as a real alternative to what we believe as Catholics. If one's religion does not take death seriously, then that religion ought to be abandoned. And then one should just do the best that one can in this life to live a life that at least doesn't cause scandal and that has some sense of honor and good. I do not claim to be an expert on world religions, but what I know about these religions suggests to me that it is Christianity in its deepest and most authentic form, which is Catholicism, is the one religion that takes death seriously. Because how much more seriously can you take death than to insist that God in the flesh died on a cross to save us from our sins? That's heavy. And it cuts through all the junk that is deemed to be conversations about the reality of death. A faith that insists that God who cannot die died on a tree in a backwater of the Roman Empire and that few noticed. This at least is a religion that demands some sort of examination. But what we are doing here and how we are doing it is certainly not in today's Catholic mainstream. That mainstream that has been polluted by the powerful current of sentimentality. That sentimentality that, according to St. John Henry Newman, is the acid of religion. It is as if the pure stream of the Catholic faith has been polluted by the dumping into its waters the slag of the sentimentality of the world. A sentimentality that both avoids the reality of death and denies the poison that it really is. A poison so powerful that no fish can live in these waters. Catholic funerals have become, in most places, quasi-canonizations of the person who lies in the coffin at the funeral mass, or the cremains. One has to invent new words to confront new situations. Of the man or the woman who has been brought into the church for the Mass of Christian burial. Some don't even get a Mass anymore. Is Paris worth a Mass? Is my father worth a Mass? The past 5 years especially have seen a rise of a new phenomenon in the church. The number of elderly men and women who were faithful Catholics while living are denied a funeral mass or a requiem mass by their children because their children have no attachment to the church and cannot be bothered to mark the death of one of their parents except by a perfunctory service in a funeral home. The children do not understand at all the importance of offering the holy sacrifice for those who love them and have died. And this is a truly tragic situation for their parents. But even those who get a Mass do find themselves in an awkward situation, a situation that contradicts the reality of their own situation. I once participated, and I'm not sure what this verb means in the context. I once participated in the funeral mass of a woman I knew as a woman of simple and deep faith. The bishop who presided at this mass said in his homily that he was sure that she was now looking down on all of us from heaven and that she was dancing a jig. And when these things are said, and they are said often at funerals, the people laugh. It's not raucous laughter, it's polite laughter. Polite because no one believes that this is true. Poor bishop, and more commonly, poor father, he no longer has any clue about the reality of death. How much in so many cases death hurts, that there's agony, and how this breaks the heart of those who remain. Let Father go on and talk in this sentimental way, and I will raise him up. I will raise him up. We will sing this song, not the songs of Zion, and go on with our lives and try to figure out what this death of my father or my mother or my son or my daughter or my friend, what this means, and how I can confront this with real meaning and not sappy sentimentality. What this means in the context of the crucifixion of God, and in the context of I am the resurrection and the life, and in the context of blessed are those who have not seen and believe. In her collection of essays, published as Mystery and Manners, that great Catholic writer, Flannery O'Connor, says this: one of the tendencies of our age is to use the suffering of children to discredit the goodness of God. And once you have discredited his goodness, you are done with him. Ivan Karamazov cannot believe as long as one child is in torment. Camus' hero cannot accept the divinity of Christ because of the massacre of the innocents. In this popular pity, we mark our gain in sensibility and our loss in vision. If other ages felt less, they saw more. Even though they saw more, even though they saw with the blind, prophetical, unsentimental eye of acceptance, which is to say of faith. In the absence of this faith now, we govern by tenderness. It is tenderness which, long since cut off from the person of Christ, is wrapped in theory. When tenderness is detached from the source of tenderness, its logical outcome is terror. It ends in forced labor camps and in the fumes of the gas chamber. Oh dear, we have spoiled everything by this quote from this Catholic woman who was in the line of Catherine of Siena and Teresa of Avila and Edith Stein. Her words, in the absence of faith, we govern by tenderness. It is tenderness which, long since cut off from the person of Christ, is wrapped in theory. When tenderness is detached from its only source of tenderness, its logical outcome is terror. When tenderness is detached from the reality of the person of Jesus Christ, its logical outcome is the abolition of justice in the name of mercy. What is this tenderness except the substitution of the mercy of God for sentimentality? This is the tenderness that deliberately forgets about the justice of God and pretends that, in general, mercy has trounced, mercy has eliminated justice. There certainly is much more to say about this taking refuge in sentimentality that is a mark of our age, both in the secular world and in the religious world. But at least we have here with us that great hymn which we heard, that is the antidote to the sentimentality that dissolves the ultimate importance of death, the Dies Irae, day of wrath, O day of mourning. Alas, they say, this hymn should not be part of the funeral mass with a doom and gloom, with a strong reference to judgment and fear. But it is precisely the Dies Irae that is the great hymn that sings of the mercy of God. The Dies Irae is the ultimate prayer for the mercy of God in the face of the justice of God, in the face of my real sinfulness. And this is especially true when the sequence hymn is sung, as we heard tonight, in the basic glory of chant, or in the polyphony of Victoria, or yes, even in the 19th century bombast of nationalism of Verdi. We come here, you and I, to offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass for those whom we have loved and who have died, for those whose faith was imperfect as their lives were imperfect, but who had some idea, not presumption this, who had some idea that the Catholic faith pointed to the possibility of redemption by the cross of Jesus Christ. This, in the end, is the mercy of God. To have some idea, yes, not in some sentimental way, but to have an honest idea that how I live my life within the moral law of God, how I live my life, whether or not in the purpose of love and always love, that this can be engraced by God in the cross of Jesus Christ, so that I can die with the sure hope that I will be embraced by Christ, and that I will allow myself to be brought to the point where I can, in the deepest moral sense, see God face to face. And this can is not my action, but it's the action of God. St. Teresa's words, tout est grâce, all is grace. And that's the faith that brings us here this evening to this Mass. At this Requiem Mass and in this month of All Souls, what we do here together, you and I, priests and people, is the real antidote to that acid of sentimentality that threatens to dissolve both the church and society. Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will not perish, but have everlasting life. Do you believe this? It is this question and its answer that echoes through 2,000 years and to this place and this time in this church. And our answer to this question, my answer to it and your answer to it, my friends, has infinite consequences. In nomine Patris, Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Aetis et miseriae, dies magna et amara valde, dum veneris judicare Requiem aeternam, dona eis Domine, et lux perpetua, luce a te. Viveram me Domine, de morte eterna, in die illa tremenda, quando celi movendi sunt et terra, dum veneris judicare seculum perignem. Eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison. Et